everybody, I've got everybody here apart from one who may not make it because she's got to get home first. So I'd introduce you to Guy Jackson is our liveryman, lives down towards Chichester, and Brew Pierce, who conceived or created Envisionation. And I met up with Guy and we started chatting, and I was so enthused with the work that they're doing and what they've been pioneering to do that I thought they ought to talk to us. So I've set it up so that you can share your screen when you want to, gentlemen. And I would suggest that you start and tell us what you're all about.
Sure, well, I'll hand you straight to Brew. We've been together for the last 8 or 9 years, and he is the author of what we've now launched, which is the Biosphere Restoration Plan, which has been put out to our network, which is all over the world, to academia and to the scientific community. And we're working with some very high-level groups of people now across the world because of this. But it is a subject of something like 15 years' work. So on that little bit of background, I'll hand you over to Brew, and will give you a quick introduction to who we are and how glass can be part of that. Thank you. Okay, buddy.
Thanks, Guy. Greeting, everybody. Yeah, we're a slightly unusual organisation in that our space is understanding the whole Earth system. We found a gap in the market. The market's terribly linear. There are people who specialize in forests and oceans and ice, but there's very few who actually join the dots all the way across the top, and even fewer who join the dots into the financial market, the political side of it, and the legal side to bring it all together. So that's part of how we look at it. My own background is that brought up in Salcombe and Devon. You can see that behind me, my morning walk. I'm a yachtsman. I had a career building leisure resorts and marinas. That exposed me to the natural environment all the way through my life. I was hit by Hurricane Ivan in 2004, which was a Category 5 storm when we were doing a project in Grenada, supposedly below the hurricane belt, an extraordinary event. And after we'd sorted that out, about 2007, I concluded that I really needed to be able to answer the question climate change, which kept coming up in planning meetings. How bad? How fast? What was the timing? And nobody could tell us. Well, out in the islands, we got involved in sustainable solutions for small island states and started advising them that, you can't put all your eggs in the tourism basket because that's very insecure. We've successfully predicted air passenger tax and those sort of things coming forward. Further down the line, I found myself in the UK looking at waste to energy technologies, which is one of the reasons that Guy and I got together. We were looking at pyrolysis, which is heating substances in the absence of oxygen to crack them chemically, drive off a gas which you can use as a fuel, and you end up with a residual char, which is the carbon, and that carbon can be sequestered or used for all sorts of purposes, including making a load of things that relate to glass. We got involved in a project to make a series of programs about climate change for Channel 4. In the 6-month lead up to that, we reached out to the scientific community in a big way. And when they heard there was a voice, they got close to us, and a lot of people opened their hearts and told us what they really thought. That was very instructive, because we found some faults in the management system. That set of programs didn't go forward because the end result, at the commissioning meeting, when we had our accountants and our lawyers, and theirs sitting there, the head man from Channel 4 came in and said, "I'm terribly sorry, guys, but this is too hot to handle. We're not going to do it." Basically turned around and walked out, and we all sort of looked a bit surprised, and that was the end of that. But we'd already made those international contacts, and so and we'd become aware of the problem, so we moved forward. It's been an interesting day for me today because I was invited to attend a focus group which was being run by Interbrand, which is the world's largest branding company. And they deal with Microsoft, Allianz, Google, all the really big global brands. And that was quite an exciting event as far as we were concerned, because climate change is global. And you cannot just look at your own interests. We're all interconnected. So having a group of people that were drawn together by a top branding company, really high quality focus group, has been an eye-opener for me today. On the level of general lack of understanding, despite all that's said in the press and things that happen, as you work within your own community, you make assumptions, and actually people are incredibly ignorant about where we are. So I'll start off a little bit by perhaps talking about where we are and set the background, because how we tackle the global problems we have now is the framework of the immediate and extended future. Now, to add a few pretty pictures, I will try and share screen and find my restoration thing. If I share that, hopefully I can now go to slideshow. Here we go. All right. So the Envisionation, I've spoken about what we are, so we'll jump on. Guy has mentioned our Biosphere Restoration Plan. We've done a lot of work on this, pulling the whole thing together, and we started out basically meaning that we needed to understand the depth of the problem. If something's broken, you need to know how badly broken it is before you can fix it. Otherwise, any solutions you come up with are not going to be fit for purpose. And you need to understand how things worked in the first place. So this slide, this is a base slide. It shows 4 billion years of the life of the planet in that spiral. And people hear that the world has been warm and cold before, and that it's gone on for a long time. And you look at this deep spiral. I wonder if does my mouse show up on this? Or maybe I'll let you look at this later. But anyway, in these deep coils of time, it's really only the last 5 million years or so, when the planet has been in its current configuration, that we're interested in now, because before that it was basically a different planet. Coming down here, these at the bottom, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of years of ice ages, and the gradual descent into those over the last 5 billion years. So at I'm missing part of my screen because I've got that over. Let's move it down. The last time the planet was 4 degrees warmer, or indeed the last time it was 2 degrees warmer, there basically wasn't any ice on the planet, and we're talking about trying to stay under 2 degrees. And the eventual position of that is there's no ice. So hopefully I'll be able to share this at a later stage and you can study it. There's a lot of information in that slide. Just general background, and we'll move on. So you live on the biosphere. The biosphere is a really thin membrane that extends around the whole of the planet. It's less than the thickness of the skin of an apple in proportion. It's 14 to 16 kilometers high, and it extends down sort of 8-10 kilometers into the earth. That's where life is. And it's life that's built the planet. And the human impact over the past 12,000 years, everything we've done has been hostile to other life, to reduce the total amount of life on the planet dramatically. More than half of the life that was here has gone. And it's that life over that 4 billion years that built our biosphere. Life is self-stabilizing. It reaches out and colonizes. You know this because if you leave dirt behind the fridge and you pull it out, there's a little bit of mold, and the mold extends and a bit of moss grows on it, and then little creatures start crawling around. It's constantly reaching out. It does that across the oceans. And life is busy transporting the supply of nutrients we have. So life took this coagulated lump of space junk, all the elements that are there, and has gradually manipulated them to build the beautiful planet we have now. And this is seabirds that dive and catch fish, that fly ashore. Their guano lands on the land. It's salmon that swim up the rivers, that are eaten by the bears that shit in the woods. It was thousands of passenger pigeons that used to fly up and down the Americas. It's the swallows that come from Africa to here. Those nutrient cycles have largely been broken by humanity. And by reducing the total amount of life, we've greatly disrupted the planet's ability to look after itself and maintain its stable temperatures. So it's more than just the greenhouse gases we're putting into the atmosphere and the pollution we're putting out. It's actually, we've damaged the machine. Imagine you have an air conditioning system in your factory or office, which maintains your temperature 18 or 20 degrees, and it can cope with windows and doors being left open and extremes of temperature. If you suddenly replace it with a machine half the size, it won't cope if you open too many windows. The temperatures get too extreme. You reach a point of collapse, tips. And therefore, we've made ourselves very much more vulnerable. So how bad is it? The situation is pretty damn dire. We're at a point now where we're running into a global food crisis. It's in the papers every day. And humanity are doing all the wrong things. We talk about it, but we have war in Ukraine, and the grain's not getting out. And 4 weeks ago, India said that they were going to feed the world. But they had a heat wave, and 2 weeks ago they announced, sorry, we're not going to sell any grain. It's all staying in India. So, things are deteriorating very fast, and one needs to be aware of it. I'll come back to it because it's important for this conversation we're having. So, as I said before, how bad is the situation? Understand the situation, and then come up with a plan to get out of it. In understanding the situation, this is just a slide on greenhouse gases. What happens is solar radiation, the sun comes into the planet, and a certain amount of that heat then goes back out into space, and the planet stays in radiative balance. As we add greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, less of that radiation escapes into space, and the equilibrium changes and the planet warms. And it's a slowish process, and there's inertia in the system. So even if we stopped tomorrow, we'd keep warming for 5 or 10 years regardless. As we warm, the Arctic sea ice is reducing. So the top picture here on the left of your screen shows incoming radiation hitting the snow and ice and bouncing back out into space. If that reduces, more of that radiation goes into the ocean and warms it. So you can see the reduction here. And you can see the warming waters along the eastern Siberian coast here. Under that area, which during the ice ages, oh, and by the way, over the 100,000 year cycle, The Holocene that we're in now is just 10% of it. Most of the time, the natural state, the planet is a lot cooler than it is now, significantly cooler. And sea levels are lower. The depth of an ice age, they're 100 meters lower than they are now. So a lot of that shallow water off the eastern Siberian coast there was above land, and it's got organic material in it, which has turned to methane. That methane is escaping, and methane is a very acute greenhouse gas, especially in the short term. Sorry, that has led to disruption of the climate system. And as the temperature differentiation between the poles and the equator reduces, so the jet stream gets more wavy, and we get these extreme weather conditions where you get extreme heat and extreme cold, which is why we stopped talking about global warming and called it climate change. The stability of the system is dramatically reduced. We'll go through this slide really quickly, but this is just showing that we are, in terms of the atmospheric greenhouse gases, this is the normal position for our Holocene. Is my mouse showing up? Yep.
Yep.
We are as far above where we should be. The difference here is as great as the difference between here and the depth of an ice age. So, you know, we've done something very, very serious. And there's a lag in the system, so the time is catching up with us. Also note that sea level, when the sea level is depth of an ice age 100 meters lower, when all the ice melts, it's going to go up potentially 70 meters. Now, that won't happen straight away, but sea level rise is getting underway, and it will happen increasingly fast. That's the scary side of all the greenhouse impacting effects. So we have these feedback loops: less ice, more heating; less ice and disrupted climate. The boreal forests all around the top of the earth, where there are pine bark beetles, the beetles are surviving, killing the trees are dying, the trees are burning. The smoke from the burning goes up onto the ice and makes it black, and all the snow, and the snow melts faster. And the burnt trees put CO2 into the atmosphere, and so the situation perpetuates. And all of those impacts are happening simultaneously and interacting on each other. So we are in an exponential position, and i.e. everything's accelerating. And our response to this, if we're going to win, has by definition to be more extreme than the curves we're fighting against. Yeah, this slide just runs and is plotting the warming, and you can see how that starts to run away. So there is a real danger that if we let this go, that societal structures won't be able to cope, and it all gets very nasty. And I'm not talking 50 years' time. I'm saying this is the next 10 to 20 years that it gets serious. And, you know, we of our generation are pretty guilty. I had to stand up today in front of a load of people and say, look, I apologize. I won a prize when I was 15 years old for writing about environmental issues. And then I spent 30 or 40 years completely ignoring it and partying, as we all have, just enjoying the resources of the planet. Margaret Thatcher, bless her, was on about this, and effectively very little has been done. And now the situation is much harder to control. This graph here is showing you temperature rise and that exponential curve again. I think I'll perhaps giving you some timelines. So 1.5, we're going to hit that somewhere around 2027 or so. Whoops, moved on to the wrong slide. 2 degrees of warming, something like 2032. So I just want to get across the urgency of the situation. How have we got into this position? Our societal management structures, by definition, are not fit for purpose, because UNCCC, IPCC has been working for 30 years and has had minimal impact. One of the problems is that we do a lot by consensus science, consensus basis, and it's great to have consensus, but if you've got one person who's done a detailed study of, should we say, sea level rise, and they think there's going to be 4 meters of sea level rise by the end of the century, and somebody else doesn't want to go along with that, and they say, no, 2 is the max, it'll be, or 1. By definition, the only thing that can be agreed to by consensus is the lowest position. So 75 centimeters ends up going into the report. But that's not necessarily what people think or what a lot of the science says. So the precautionary principle is currently out of the window. Now, that science is excellent, work is good, but those documents of advice to policymakers should be have a health warning across the front of them, so that people understand how to read them and take a proper view. There we go. That's the sea level rise side. I should have given you that before. Goals and capability. I said some things about consensus are good. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, I'm sure you've all come across them. What goals are you going to, is your project going to solve? The great thing here is you've got 193 countries who've signed up to all of this. And they're all laudable things: no poverty, zero hunger, good health, etc. Climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and justice. The most important ones are last in the list at the moment, which is a bit of a problem. But we have agreed on our target. And if you analyze these, what does it mean? It means that by around 2050, you've got 8.5 or 9 billion people on this planet living well. And if you can do that, and if it happens, by definition, global GDP is going to go up 10, 15, 20-fold, maybe more. And I draw that to businesses' attention, because solving the problem is a huge business opportunity. And an agreed target, something to work to. Can we do it? This is the temperature graph. And if you come to present day, 1,000 years, and our position here at 2020 or so, you'll notice that the temperature graph is rather above the red dotted line. The red dotted line is where the planet would naturally be. We have actually managed to prevent the gradual descent into the next ice age. This is a huge achievement. I mean, let's face it, human society couldn't tolerate having the whole of the northern hemisphere covered in ice sheets. So we are going to take control of our home and our climate. And this just proves, that if we can do the damage, we can undo it. Capability. We've got glorious global resources, lots of natural energy available: wind, solar, nuclear. Remind me that glass creation uses an awful lot of energy. Small modular nuclear reactor. Modern nuclear technology allows you to build a reactor that is safe. Too cold, it shuts down. Too hot, it shuts down. Very high density energy, loads of heat available. There's a company called Tritick Starcore that we're working with, who've got an extremely good design for that. And I should probably share that with you, because that would be a great way of making glass and spare energy. And then, of course, we've got tidal and all manner of other interesting renewables. Global thinking required. This is the sunny scheme for Australia, where they're using methane, which is going to be split and turned into hydrogen for fuel, Carbon is going to be used, and some of that methane used to synthesize foods. Long distance, high tension DC power transportation. There's a host of technologies out there which could all be used to solve our problem. We do not need to generate using hydrocarbons, although we will have to go through a process of change and gradual transition. This is back to the total amount of life on the planet, which is the big thing that solves the problem for us. There were 11,000 gigatons of living things. We've reduced it to 550 or so, half. The interesting thing about that is, if you add 550 gigatons back, that would be enough to draw down all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and those that are absorbed in the ocean to bring us back to a stabilized position. Where do we put all of that new living stuff, new forests, new life in the oceans? Well, this is a project in Africa. It's the Great Green Wall, which is underway. Needs energy, needs lots of water brought into it, but it's underway and it's doable. Huge areas of North Africa were previously forested, and so there's opportunity there. The interesting thing about that is that restoring these environments and these areas creates enormous wealth. If you were to reforest the whole of North Africa, you would create massive opportunities, you would lift those economies, and you create great trading opportunities and do good things for the planet at the same time. I'll take you on one more. Freeing up this space where currently a huge amount of the flat and easily accessed land of the world is used for farming becomes possible with modern agricultural technology. And there's a great article in today's Guardian about a company that is building the largest bioreactors. This is growing algae in huge glass columns. Pay attention, glass. And that algae is then used to feed artificial meat. It's actually real meat. It's the stem cells taken from animals, which are then programmed to grow just the muscle. So you can have your beef and your steak and your chicken and your fish without the cruelty, without taking up the space, and without doing the damage to the rest of the biosphere. These technologies will produce better quality food at a third the price. And that means that we'll be putting the beef farmers in South America out of business, leaving space to rewild and grow new crops. And of course, creating all sorts of new economic opportunities as we go down the route. Very important, though, of course, that we replace the system and we pay the people in the areas that are being reforested for the work that they do. So we have a failure in human societal structures in that we've got here. And structures are based around laws. Our current laws are not fit for purpose. Why are they not fit for purpose? Because it is perfectly legal to pour vast amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. If we could see it, we certainly wouldn't have allowed it. And where we've done horrible things like pollute the Thames, for instance, and been aware of it, we can do a great job of cleaning it up. So a law of ecocide, and I don't know if anybody's aware here that there is a campaign to make ecocide, which is any major act of environmental harm, a fifth crime against peace on the Rome Statute. And I would encourage anyone involved in this to promote that, vote for it, push it and support what they're doing. And then we come on to the financial structures. And the city, of course, is guilty as hell of this. All human societal structures that we're dealing with now are absolutely fraudulent. There are vast unfunded liabilities that we have bequeathed on ourselves, but on our children and our grandchildren. This is because we have not accounted for the cost of putting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, cutting down the trees, wrecking the environment, taking more out of the seas than the seas can support. And there's a desperate need for a new accounting structure, which needs to be based on the health of the planet. Because if you've got a healthy planet and we're able to grow and continue to advance, that's creating real wealth. So true wealth is available from free energy from the sun, the circulation of the earth, high chemistry, fusion, and one of those, what's the other one, Guy? Well, beyond fusion, we've got bringing the molecules together anyway.
Yeah.
But anything
sorry, you've lost me there.
Yeah, don't worry. Anything that that is polluting the system is not. So you know, we have the ability, we can do it, we can gradually improve our the health of the biosphere, and if we link that to a measure of wealth, we're then in a position where we could start putting in place accounting systems of integrity. So this is basic business management. In fact, our team did a project which we called Earth Inc. a little while back. We assumed that we were a group of consultants approached by an interplanetary body that wanted to buy the Earth. We're looking at this multifaceted organization, Earth Inc. And we did our review and we came back and made the report and said, terribly sorry, but this business is going bankrupt, which of course is not something we want to hear. So the next thing you do if you're approaching looking at buying a business that's off the rails is you look at the management and you say, well, can we replace the management structures to solve it? And so this is, in city speak, you know, we need the business doctors in, and we need them to take a really realistic approach. So this is talking about new financial paradigm. I'll move on to that. Next thing you need to do, because we're having to take responsible control, is to understand what's going on and what our actions are doing. So Envisionation is working with the International Center for Earth Simulation, the ISIS Foundation in Geneva. And this is a quantum computing project to bring all of the data, all the satellite data, the financial data, the agricultural data together, making a model of the whole Earth, which will allow us to create a dashboard so that we can actually fly our planet around our star. Because right now, we might as well be in a jumbo jet with no instrument lights on, in the dark, and not really knowing how to fly it. So this is a vital effort that's going on, and it's also the creation of the world's best crystal ball ever. So again, if you're in the city and you run into people that want to start thinking about this, what better thing to invest in than a dashboard for the planet so that you know what's happening in the future, where you're going. Okay, we've left it very late. It requires every single tool in the box, and every industry and business is going to have to do its part. The good news is, doing all these things we've got to do, create jobs, open up the cities, replace the dying main streets with shops where food is being grown locally, wealth is created, and we end up with a fairer planet. And we keep moving forward. It's interesting. You've got Branson, Musk, Bezos, all trying to go out into space. But you know, it's a natural thing, because all of life that's gone before us and is alive now is actually supporting us. And you could think of humanity as the flower of combined life on the planet, which is allowing us to reach out into space. Because as we do that, as we reach out into our solar system, we will solve our shortage of rare earth elements and other resources. And we form a natural function. But there's no way we will successfully do that if we don't cherish our earth now and build a solid financial, ecological biosphere base to move forward from. So, yeah, what do we want to do? By 2050, stabilize the system, restore that life, deliver the goals, have people living better, free up more time, use that time for arts and science and all the wonderful things that civilization's able to do. And finally, we have that Star Trek future that we've all been, grown up believing in and expected in 300 or 400 years' time, that Kirk will be out there. There we go. I'll stop sharing if I can, and throw it at you to challenge me.
Thanks, mate. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody got any comments? It's a lot to take in. I appreciate that, and it's a very small part of what we do. But yeah.
What do you think about acidification of the oceans? I have a friend who's very strong on this. Says basically, if we don't stop the acidification now, we'll be killing. We're killing more than we've lost more than half the plankton, and we're killing another % every year. And within 10 years, all marine life will essentially be dead, leading to all life on land following the same way. And that actually our concentration should be on the oceans rather than the skies.
He's right. Every tool in the box is required, and it's an integrated system. So, no one answer. But yeah, the oceans are really, really important. And the oceans are one of the first tools we have to help the situation. Guy and I and a chap called Sev Clark, who's a member of the Invisination team, have a project called Ocean Fertilization by Buoyant Flakes, where we have rice husks, mineral tailings, and sticking it all together with lignin, so that we create little cornflake-sized flakes to scatter on the ocean, which will float for 6 to 12 months. And they make the essential missing nutrients bioavailable to feed the plankton. And with the plankton in place, the zooplankton then have something to feed on. And the anchovies feed on them, and the sprats and the mackerel and the tuna, and you go through the system. And one of the really damaging things that we did to the planet and our oceans happened back in the 1500s, when our technology for building sailing ships became so good that we were efficient at going after whales. And the whaling business, the blubber from the whales, lit the drawing rooms where people were designing steam engines, and it all started to go wrong. But whale poo was essential for circulating those nutrients that we're trying to replace for those phytoplankton. And ocean acidification, of course, is particularly increasing because the levels of carbon dioxide that are absorbed into the ocean, partial pressure from the atmosphere, is increasing, and that makes it more acidic. So you cannot restore the oceans without removing some of the greenhouse gases. Good thing is that if you do make the oceans greener, we reflect away a little more light. You increase the what we call the albedo of the oceans, and but through doing that, you create some cooling, and you allow the oceans to start to stabilize from a pH point of view.
We've had very good results so far. There's been quite a lot of work done with India down in Goa. So we've done a lot of tests on this already.
Yeah.
And
we've just
the other side of it is, which is very good, is the speed of which you can restore the oceans. The biosphere within the oceans is much quicker than you can do it through, say, growing trees. And it covers 70% of the planet. So it's one of our key focuses.
Yeah. Plankton grows fast. We just started working with Seafields.eco, who are proposing to grow sargassum weed on a very large scale. They're talking about areas the size of France in the southern Atlantic Ocean, with a view to then taking that seaweed, compressing it, taking out some of the oils that are required, and then sinking it to the deep ocean in order to try and sequester a gigaton of carbon a year. And there's an associated business with that, which is justcarbon.com, which is just launched, which is a cryptocurrency, blockchain mounted, based on a ton of carbon sequestered. And I say sequestered, captured, sunk in the ocean, returned to the soils, or grown as trees and maintained. So it's quite a nice one to go after. And Guy and I have gone through a big learning curve in the last 2 weeks on that.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm an accountant, so from an accounting perspective, if an area was included in accounting, that would the cost to the environment as a charge, effectively, or a charge against, or a charge to be released, negative or positive, either way, depending on what you do and how you do it. But I mean, that's all nice to have, but how can we get governments and businesses to start looking at this from a realistic point of view?
Okay. Pin your ears back, anybody who's in the major financial sectors in the city. Proposition is that we link living carbon to the health of the planet, and we create a new carbon-based standard, which currently is 550 gigatons in deficit. And we set up the structures to be able to measure that. The entire Earth goes on the blockchain and is gridded, which we already have. What 3 words? And planet.com take 1 square meter resolution pictures of the entire planet 2 or 3 times a day. Those constellations are up there. So we can identify space, and we can start to document the amount of carbon that's there. So the idea here is to underpin the existing carbon markets, which have really struggled, by giving them a base currency. It's kind of like the gold standard, only an awful lot better. And you flow that all the way through and create an accounting system where you focus on the true cost and the true value of everything. So the guy who's maybe working his smallholding and looking after the soil and producing a lot of product, he should be paid properly for the work that he does there. The rancher in South America who's going to be put out of business as we start making meat another way and starts growing trees, providing biosphere services, he should be paid properly for that. So we need to set up a system so we have contracts between the urban areas, the people using biosphere services, and the people providing them. And that's the heart of where we take a new financial system. Now, on the basis we deliver our UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we have 8.5 or 9 billion people living well, currently 6 billion of them live very frugally, poorly. Bring them all up, huge wealth creation. So there's an enormous driver for the financial world once they see the opportunity to get involved in this. Anybody got a friend called Mr. Rothschild? Bring him my way.
I can see it working for those who actually haven't got much money, and actually more of them are doing good because they are putting back. But the big businesses will be the losers in this, and they'll be the ones that will actually make a difference to whether it works or not, because they're the drivers in some sense.
Well,
they've got the power.
Not all big business. Okay, the hydrocarbon companies, they've got fraudulent assets, because they've got on their balance sheet coal and gas and oil, which they valued, and they may have borrowed against it. But the fact is, if you would pull that up and burn it, we'll all be dead. Everything is lost. It all goes out the window. But the big insurance companies, for instance, who are faced with this and who get massive bills coming forward, command enormous power. So going back to the days of the big fire in San Francisco, after that fire, the insurance companies got together and said to the city, if you don't put in fire stations, we won't insure you, which forces change. And so the insurers have got enormous power to start demanding that we move in the right direction. You can't build a factory, develop a new product, do anything if you can't insure it, because the funders won't come in behind you.
The other side of that is they have enormous funds which they invest in companies.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it goes against that, because they'll invest in companies that make money, and that won't be necessarily so good for the environment. So they'll have scales. One side they'll want to do something, the other they absolutely won't, because their money will diminish.
Well, the fact is, if we go down our current path, everything is lost. We face societal structural collapse. And if you're a pension fund and you're taking money off people without intention of change, you're again being fraudulent, because you know that you're not going to be in a position to actually pay out that pension when the time comes. As I pointed out, there is huge wealth in some things that we do. So as we make large acts of environmental harm illegal, and one is forced to clean up the damage you've done, you create a new business. And so wealth gets created there.
Brew, I think also to answer that question is where we're coming from with the Interbrand work at the moment. Because Interbrand look after, as we said, they have something like 100 and something clients, and it's most of the global brands. So this is a really interesting initiative that started end of last year and is being developed and will be launched at the end of this year. And we're talking about brands such as Lenovo, Panasonic, Google, these sort of guys. And it's about how you brand climate change effectively, and then how you will push that out as a marketing initiative. Now, my background is marketing and promotion and that sort of area, but this is a marketing initiative, and how you educate new generations, young generations, so they come all the way through this whole process. We get a huge amount of questioning from young people, and I mean anything from pre-teens right the way to people in their, with young families in their 30s, 40s, and so on, and right up to our generation, a lot of us on this call who have grandchildren and other families. We are deeply concerned about what future legacy we leave behind. The younger people want to know what's coming up the line, and they want the education behind that. And this part of this initiative we're doing collectively is to educate. Big business wants to be part of it, and how they can educate into it. And the speed of change is what we're beginning to see now. Really, only since I think really since COVID. When we had the COVID lockdowns from 2019 onwards, it has focused a lot of people's minds, and we've seen huge urgency now behind that. And it's true, there's large chunks. This is not going to be led by politicians around the world. This is going to be led by big business. Which is why we say in our presentation and the plan that we put out, is the last third of that plan is a positive comment. It's a positive narrative that we put out, and how you link to a capitalist society with a small c, but there's nothing wrong with capitalism. It's a question of how you actually harness it. And the only way we're actually going to change the way we live on the planet and bring this new technology forward is through capitalism. So we do a lot of work with major funds, both here and abroad, and we do a lot of work with new technologies which aren't pie in the sky. They're technologies that work together with other technologies we know about. So it's a synergistic links. And then you overlay that with social media and education, which is where the interbrand initiatives come from. And we've been invited to come in and be part of the advisory side for scientific and academia. So I think, Sarah, that kind of, it's not a straightforward answer, but it's how people are going to, some people get dragged into this, some businesses, and other businesses are going, no, we want to be a major part of it because we can see the future and we can see huge growth.
Businesses that I was at the Future of the Car last week, was it the week before?
Yeah, last week.
And
2 days ago.
The move towards electric vehicles is huge. The chairman of VW was standing up saying, we're not going to be a car manufacturing company anymore, we're going to be a tech company. A guy and I are working with a company that are producing a really new, interesting physical battery, which is graphene based, with no electrolyte in it, lasts forever, fully recyclable, can be built into a laminate. So the battery can be in the fuselage of a plane or its wings. The modern electric EV will last still 100 million miles. So we're going to go 10 years down the line. The change happens by surprise. Not a lot over 2 years, but over a 10-year period, yeah, massive change. Just look at your mobile phone on your desk. 10 years down the line in London, with a bit of luck, the air is going to be much cleaner. There won't be thousands of parked cars on the street because nobody will bother to own a car. You'll just pick up the app on your phone and say, I want to go wherever. And a vehicle will arrive suitable for the party you're with and where you want to go and take you there. And you'll get out and it'll go off. And this will clear up a lot of space. But it'll also reduce your transportation costs by 2/3. What is the point of having a big Range Rover, which is being used for 5% of the time? So yeah, there will be change. And the things that come with it mean you've got more space for more trees, and you've got a greener city, and we have better harmony with nature. And people start investing in these interesting projects, which are going to create enormous wealth, and off you go. And because there's a charge for polluting, when the price of carbon goes from $23, $27 a moment up to $120, then maybe $200 where it needs to be, that means that the clean energy systems will massively outcompete the hydrocarbons, and they'll be put out of business. So the market can work to get us out of this problem.
Thank you. Yes, it sounds that you do have some definitely positive movements forwards, and that's the key. And so that's really good.
You do. Thank you, Sarah. Brew, you were going to just touch on the air cooling. We can, with the glass, the beads.
Oh,
you didn't mention that because I think it was quite for the guys on. I think that's quite interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, the applications for glass. Well, we talked a little bit about making glass and the nuclear opportunities and the electrical opportunities around that. I've talked about the huge use of glass that's going to come forward as we change our agricultural systems. Then we are in a position where the rate of warming is so extreme, and the timeline that it will take to run down our hydrocarbons and reduce atmospheric CO2 is long. To stop things getting worse than the ice melting, there's large sectors of our scientific community who are working on ways of cooling the planet. So there are people seriously looking at conducting experiments with glass balls, micro glass balls, to spread over glaciers to stop them melting. There's people looking directly at mirrors to reflect away some of the heat. If you had mirrors on all the roofs, you would push away an awful lot of heat. If you were to cover large sections of the Sahara Desert with mirrors, you would reflect away a lot of heat. And these are very serious considerations. The problem with those solutions alone is you don't reduce the greenhouse gases, and as pointed out, those high greenhouse gases get into the ocean and make it more acidic. So those solar radiation management proposals can only be a crutch. We also look at solar radiation by making whiter, lighter clouds in the right place and that sort of thing. But glass has an important role to play. Photovoltaics, massive, I'm sure you're all aware. Fiber optic cable and communications, and fiber cables for energy transfer, really important. We're going to start pushing DC currents laterally across the world, because obviously the solar is intermittent. And then you're all involved in the carbon economy. Carbon is the most, we're entering the carbon age. And I'm talking about carbon from the point of view of graphene and molecular structural engineering that we can do. The ability to build photovoltaic sheets of glass is right there, and there's vast spaces we can cover in this, so that houses become net generators, and you're pumping. You start. We will look back at this awful time when we're paying so much for our energy, and our energy will be an income source for everyone. And
it's just a few touch points that we can actually discuss with you further. Anybody wants to talk to us about it, we have them within the armory of technologies that are behind envisionation and the ones we bring forward.
Can I ask a commercial question? I'm a bit of a businessman, I'm afraid. Also an accountant, but that's another matter. What drives Envisio Nation? I don't see that you make a return out of this.
How do we do it? Well, the theory is that some of the brokerage work that we do, and we join dots, so I'm constantly introducing people, finances to emerging technologies. It pays us a bit of money, and indeed it does. We get some income from that. We also provide a service to companies where we'll sit with them, and we'll take very much to where we've gone here, but in a little more detail. And it's a day-long workshop where you go into an understanding of the situation. You then talk about how it's going to impact the company, and then you move on to, where are the opportunities? And nearly every sort of business we talk to at every scale, we can find threats, and we can find potential liabilities for the directors, but we can also find enormous opportunity.
We take a role of ambassador and interlocutor. So in the case of the battery technology, which we mentioned to you, the graphene ion battery, that's not a fantasy. They've sold over 20,000 pieces already, and we've known them since they started in 2017. They now have a 5-acre factory in Dubai and have created a solid state. The reason we're behind it, and have been from day one, is it uses no chemicals. So it's got no lithium, no cobalt, no nickel. If you look at a lithium-ion battery today, 15% of that battery is recyclable. If you look at the graphene ion, it's 100% recyclable. It lasts 4 times as long as a lithium-ion battery, and now has the same energy density, in fact, a better energy density. But because it was developed in the Middle East, and it's developed by scientists out there, in Europe and the UK, it's tended to have been ignored. So we spend, to answer your question, Richard, we get paid to do it, but it's opening up areas such as dealing with the top end of the engineering world to do with powertrains, which we know, and the large financial corporations. And Brew knows a hell of a lot about the maritime market, and I know an awful lot about motor racing at the top end, and how those sort of things cascade down. So, and energy storage is the other area we're heavily involved with, and that is, you'll see that's huge. There's billions being put into, literally billions and billions going into energy storage in this country and across Europe. At the moment, they're looking at lithium-ion based batteries. That will be the case for the next few years. You'll see the graphene ion one come up alongside it, and there's also a sodium-ion battery coming down the line as well, and so on and so forth. So we earn our money across that, and we will be earning our money now working alongside with as consultants with the UN, which we're going to be doing.
Well, we hope to be. I can't say we've quite got to that yet. But the answer is we're a consultancy model now.
High level. And why we did it? Because we, I mean, I should have retired yonks ago. I don't, because I know I have a passion about this business. I have a passion about my planet I live on, and I have a passion for my grandchildren and children. So it's why we still do it. So it's taken us quite a long time to get to this stage. It's taken us, I've been with Brew 8 years, it's about 15 years to get to this stage, where we just looked as
there's a lot of self-funding at the start. and there's a burden of knowledge.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
How do you mesh all of this with the grassroots of where the normal person living in the high street, living in their estates, how do they fare when you come against local authorities, changes in planning, changes in lots of things which still hold people back? And you didn't touch briefly on, none of this will change unless you change the laws. And unfortunately, we all know those wheels just work very, very slowly. How do you see that? How will that speed up?
All right.
We at the moment are struggling, just everybody struggles at the moment to get a hospital appointment. So how do you mesh your fantastic ideas and a fantastic world for the future with today's reality?
Okay, so the key thing is, going back into our Biosphere restoration plan, is a desperate need for a narrative of hope and a positive plan. Because I mean, I spoke to in Trafalgar Square to the Extinction Rebellion lot, and they're all angry and shouting, "Do something, do something!" And the politicians think, "What do we do?" Our primary product is to produce the bones of a plan, and we're looking for people to partner with us in developing that and taking it to the next level. But there's a desperate need for that narrative and a story, which is of course why I've been with Interbrand today. And so put that out there, give the politicians something to react to and say, this is what we're going to do. In fact, you need a plan that's going to appeal to everybody. So you need the youth on board, you need the politicians on board, you need business on board. You've really got to try and find a way that everybody can buy into it. And so what would we really like to do? We'd like to find sponsorship to support making the film about the Biosphere Restoration Program, and I'd like to get it out in time for the COP in Egypt. So that's on our big wish list at the moment. And the better the budget we can find for that, the faster we can do it, and the better it can be done.
I'm going to have to disappear, I'm afraid. I have another call 5 minutes ago, so please forgive me. But Guy, we have a date next week.
We do. Thank you, Richard, for coming on, and we'll follow up on Monday morning.
Lovely. Okay.
Thank you, Richard. Good to meet you.
But don't break it up just because I'm going. Cheers for now.
I think overall we've created a beginning of a conversation which will probably go on. I think I would ask perhaps Brew and Guy to sort of do a sort of a coda of something and make a statement to sort of say where we would go next or what can we do next. And I obviously, I've said we've recorded tonight, it'll be edited and go on our YouTube channel and we can spread it out. But it does mean, much like Sarah was saying, how do we do it? And I think it's really step by step. Everybody has got to start telling somebody else the story.
Yeah.
Well, I find it difficult even now to understand how in the Queen's speech they talked about trying to revitalize high streets by investing in the high street, which has completely been dead for the last 5 to 10 years, dying and dead on its feet. And I just find that, you know, it's how do you change the laws? How do you get people to really see the future? It's the most difficult thing in the world.
Well,
and I'm not being a pessimist. I'd like to be really positive about it. But if you had heard that section, just a very small thing in the Queen's speech, you think, are they living in the real world? You know, this is ridiculous. They should be investing in something that you're talking about, not, you know, about the whole thing about creating meat from not cruelty or from animals that are in South America and have to be shipped across the world because we want to eat it.
Dee, so I think, Dee, you're right. And one of the ways we approached it and are approaching it, because you can't wave a wand, but it was basically, we said earlier that it's not about change via political change. You're never going to get change. The planet will go up in a puff of smoke if you hope politicians are going to help you. Politicians will follow the money. So if you create a plan that the large banks, the large insurance companies, the large investment houses, some of which we speak to, they're pumping billions, hundreds of billions of pounds into change technology, into the new tech and where it's going. And as that starts to happen, the politicians will suddenly realize, as usual, they are not just behind the curve, they're miles behind the curve. And what are they all about? They're about being in power. So whatever color your politics are, they'll follow whatever's going on in front of them. So if they're sitting in front of the population and they're watching climate change, and they're watching disasters happening on their watch, time after time after time, and then the other side of the coin, they're seeing all this investment coming into the market, because it is coming in, to whether it's in the UK, Europe, wherever you happen to be, they'll start to get behind it. And then if you have a strong campaign for social media, and you educate the young who want to be educated on what's happening, it's their world they're going to be living in the next 20, 30, 40 years. And that's why Brew and I want to get the film out. I mean, we have good connections with Netflix and other people, and we'll get it. We'll get there. It's like everything else, you've got to have a positive attitude to life as opposed to a negative one. I've got a totally positive attitude to life that we'll get there, because the other way around, we'll never get there.
It's also that although we are possibly behind the curve on these sort of things, elsewhere in the world, this technology is being really nurtured. And, it's been, if you look at the smart city being created in the desert in Saudi Arabia, NEOM, which you can find on social. Now, we are involved in that project, and and everything that's going into it is about managing energy, managing movement of people. It's all built on sustainability, and billions are going into it.
They are.
So
Maria,
we are living in. We are not part of the real. We are not part of the new world any longer.
No,
sadly.
I agree with you, and we're involved with that project as well. Because our clients, the battery technology, the charge stations that do within NEOM are going to be done through Kilowatt Labs.
Okay.
So they've done the proof of concept, and so they've just ordered another 100 charge stations on that. So there's a lot of we know what's going on down there, which is very, very interesting.
It is great, isn't it? I mean, it really. Every time I sort of look at what's happening there, every time my team sort of talk about what they've developed, it's just that gives you so much hope.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, for the individuals the most powerful thing that people can do is vote. Recycling your milk bottle or your carton's not going to make a lot of difference, because unless businesses put a real decent recycling plant in place, you have to enable people. But vote for the guy that says, I want to do something. And from our standpoint, give the guy that says, vote for me, a story to tell that people can believe in and vote for. Because everybody's just desperate for an answer. And if we can put the answers out there, then we start to change things.
Yeah, we went to a lecture done by put on by the Plumbers Company a week or so ago, and it was a professor. It was two people that spoke. One was a professor who works with Thames Water, who are addressing the acute forecasted shortage of water for the London area and the southeast, and another professor who is worried about the water problems worldwide and some of the problems they're trying to deal with. I think I said to him afterwards, I said, one of the problems that we do face, as I see it, is that the population overall are confused and they don't understand the full message, because we have a press organization who pride themselves on contradicting or challenging statements that are made. And something simple like, which is the truth? Is it true to do your washing up at the end of the day in a bowl, or is it better to use a dishwasher? And if somebody would come up with an answer that people would understand, then I think they'd hang their hat on it and go with it. But there's so many contradictions and things that are being said which people get confused at, that I think in the end they're just turning off and saying, well, I can't be bothered to try and absorb this, because I think somebody tells me one thing and then somebody else tells me something different. And I think that's one of the biggest problems.
Yeah. It's the little things that really take people's minds off the big pictures, and the big picture is essential. In answer to your question, if you've got photovoltaics on your roof and they're heating your water, go ahead and use your dishwasher. If you're heating your water with gas, and you want to preserve the water and have a smaller carbon footprint, yeah, do it in a bowl. Nothing is simple. It comes down to proper responsible accounting again across the board,
and giving a message that people believe in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. A positive message. I mean, this is, I may have told you some pretty horrible stuff about how bad it is, but I'm also saying by 2050
there is
we
an
have
answer.
8.5 billion people living well.
And there's an answer.
Yeah. And there's this, and we know the ways to do it.
Yeah.
There's a host of things. The water, there's a technology which can reduce the energy cost of wastewater treatment by between 1.5%, which could be fitted within 5 years in this country, and that will reduce our energy draw by, well, in the UK, about 1.5%. But the water companies are very slow to react, and tough to get them moving on that front.
There are loads and loads and loads of technologies out there at the moment, all interrelating with each other, which are at TRL level 7, 8, and above. So they're there now. They're not just being bench tested, and that's where the positivity can come in. So it's finding more people, if you like us, to keep promoting it and pushing it and trying to get people at a very senior level to listen to it. And it's happening. It's happening because big business, big insurance companies, big pension funds and so on are realizing where their portfolios are, and they're realizing they're actually at deep risk, major risk
Yeah,
of their
collapse.
businesses being wiped out.
Yeah.
And that's vital change. You'll see it change in front of you. Hopefully it'll be quick enough.
Yeah,
we must be very, very wary of the jargon, because it's got to be understandable. It's terribly easy for us to drop into that technology readiness level,
Yes.
1 to 9.
I think
1 is an idea, 2 is an idea on paper, 3 is I've tested something. By the time you get to 9, it's in the market. 7 or 8, it's ready to go.
Well, you might be interested to know that on the 4th of July, we have the Livery Climate Change Annual Conference.
Ah,
And this is actually in person at Merchants Taylors Hall. So you might, I mean, that's the City Corporation driving this with the livery companies.
Guy and Brew have been invited to attend that. I think the possibility of Brew's around, he's going to go. But it depends on whether he's going to be in London or not.
Right.
yeah.
So
But Barbara sent me the information on it. Thank you, Dee. But yes.
You know, I just wonder whether they do not have your futuristic picture.
Well,
No, they don't.
We are very unique. You know, our biosphere restoration plan has been picked up and recognised in various quarters. Say, oh my goodness, you know, we've surprisingly, you know, we seem to be the first group that really started pulling all the threads together in the way that we've done. So we can do these things. I have to say, I mean, if it's coming up to London events and such like, it comes a point where we need some sponsorship behind us and a little bit of money put in the pot to get us out there doing it. But we're very, very happy to.
I think on that note, we'll probably come to a conclusion, because I think we could be here all night just looking and telling each other stories.
Thank you.
I think it's an interesting, we've evolved in this evening with you understanding and us understanding some of the areas which some of our members are actually working in. And it occurs to me that there are a number of people that I think we could introduce you to, and for them to get to know you and what you're about. We could either do that by directly, or we can do it by email or whatever. But I think it's a beginning for us to start talking. And I know some of the members that have attended tonight, and some of the members that would subsequently see the recording, I think that there's a strong possibility where we could have open up an even bigger dialogue with more people. And as you say, it's little acorns grow big oak trees, don't they?
Yeah.
So I would say thank you very much indeed to both Brew and to Guy for their time this evening. I hope you will find it beneficial as time goes on, and hopefully we'll all get to meet in person at some time in the very near future.
Thank you, Paul, for organising it this evening. It's very kind of you to invite us both to talk. And thank you, everybody, for coming on and listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's
all right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us.
Everybody.
Enjoy the rest. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Great pleasure. Bye.
Okay. Good night. God bless. Take care.